So we've had a fabulous first day at the IAAC Lit Festival. You'll be very pleased to know that today we had the first ever Indo-American Children's Literary Festival. And from what I can make out, that Anu Sehgal, Lily, and Suman, who were the three prime movers and shakers, did an extraordinary job. And my niece, Sia, gave me a big thumbs up. So I think, yeah, look at her. She's saying it was a great day. We also had an excellent adult lit event. And I have to say that after listening to Anjali Sachdeva and John Guy and our authors, it's really amazing how unique, distinctive the Indo-American imagination and sensitivity is. So now we have the Poets Festival. And I gave Ravi Shankar only one mission. I said, look, in my eyes, poetry is the language, the only language in which one can appreciate the deeper truths of human existence. So bring us the poets that can share their view of what the human experience is all about. I said the proof of that is that one should experience nasha. Nasha is a word that means a state of intoxication. Now, IAC will do its part. IAC is serving you wine. IAC is serving you cheese. Now the rest is up to the Poet Society. So Ravi is our moderator. He is an extremely distinguished poet in his own rights. To his credit, he is the one who translated and his book Andal on 8th century Bhakti poetry. His new book of poems is going to be published shortly. I hope that IAC will have the honor of releasing it, Ravi, when it comes out in 2020. And without much ado, I'll ask Ravi to now take over the program.
Okay, thank you, okay. Thank you all for being here. It's been a great day. There is more activities planned for tomorrow, so if you don't have a schedule, you should pick one up. And we have a kind of a packed day. I think we'll do about half the poets and we'll have a little intermission. We can get some wine and cheese and then we'll finish up. We're apparently told we can kind of linger a little bit. We don't have to be rushed out of here, so we won't have the flicking lights happening, which is nice. So as Rakesh mentioned, I'm Ravi Shankar. I'm a poet, editor, translator, and professor. And I'm really so pleased about the lineup of poets we have here tonight. It's really an extraordinary group. Most of everyone who I hoped would come is here, which is a wonderful thing. And so I think what I'll do is I'll just introduce the poet and maybe the...
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. And the poet can maybe just come up here and say anything more about their work and read. And we'll go that way. And so just very quickly, we have 10 poets. From all over India and in fact the country. We have poets coming from Syracuse, from Miami, from DC, from Boston, and so it's a really, we're very privileged to have all of them here. So the first reader for tonight is the former editor of PEN America, Guernica, and A Public Space, Diane Mehta's debut poetry collection, Forest with Castanets, came out in March 2019, and she's currently finishing a historical novel set in 1946 India, as well as a collection of essays. And I should also just take this opportunity to mention that most of the poets have books for sale. Please support your poets. No poets want to go back home carrying a huge load of books. And it's a great way to bring home a little souvenir from the festival. So let's get a warm welcome for Diane Mehta.
Thank you.
We can stand, sit, whatever you feel comfortable.
Thank you guys all for coming. It's nice to see a packed house. That's not always the case with poetry. So I'm going to read for, I don't know how long, not an hour, not 2 minutes. And I guess I'll read a mix of poems. I don't always write in what might be thought thought of as someone who's writing Indian poetry or about India, although maybe half my book is about India, longing for India, loss, some thoughts about being a mixed race, kind of mixed up person. I was born originally in Frankfurt, moved to Bombay with my parents a few months later. My father is from Rajkot, but spent most of his life in Bombay. So then I was in Bombay till I was 8. And he's Jain, so the religious stuff was a bit mixed up. My family was very, very Jain and very religious, and my mother is Jewish, American Jewish, from Brooklyn. Sorry. And so some of that will be conveyed. I'll also just read ordinary narrative poems that maybe will be easier to follow. So the first few poems, the first poem I'm going to read, I think, is about India, based on a recent visit back a few years ago. And I went to the Hanging Gardens, which if any of you are from Bombay, have been there, you would know. They have these beautiful topiary gardens. It was built, I think, a century ago. And it's a really lovely place to walk in the evenings, and we used to spend much of our childhood there. Immortal Stories. In this city of crows and rose-ringed parakeets, elephants and camels labor down the beach. Marionettes tell stories in knotted banyan trees. Old monkeys with young men, men monkeys and old stories, more pure than whatever we believe. For a half-century, I wandered the Hanging Gardens, where one farmer and topiary animals are stuck in their cosmology. Monsoons blow by. The dead disintegrate and find new lives. Still they hold their shapes. The topiary farmer will never plow his field. He treadwheels the same triangular plot of grass, tilling the same immortal land under cloudless skies or fat rains. He has witnessed new irrigation and exports of tea, arrivals of King George and Queen Mary, for which the water's edge jetty blossomed into the basalt arch that is, for ordinary souls, the gateway of India. The farmer has listened quietly as mill workers lurch from red light rooms to wives spreading love. He has seen famine and plenty, the arrival of antibiotics, the purge of syphilis. He has agitated for self-rule in his photosynthesis heart. He has marched with his plow in demonstrations from the start. He has seen the bloodburst of partition. He is destined to be cut and trimmed again. So much for love, he thinks it is not here any more than I am. He is doing the work of life. He will never reach nirvana, though he will pray forever. A peacock calls to operatic light. In the field behind the 2-acre forest our gardener built near the shanties that rose under the palm trees and skyscrapers that Nehru built. I am sailing to my old Bombay of my oldest dreams, into my aunt's cosmos so antique, it resembles neither the beginning nor the end of time, only the building blocks of matter, where principles of motion and rest are divine. Which brings us to the topiary man and his plow pressing infinitely on. There is a light show in the fountain in the evenings. The farmer feels all 4 seasons on his hedge skin, as if teasing him to join the human feelings. The field needs tending, he says, eyes lowered, and leans into his plow. I retreat as sundown lifts over the hill. Oh, what promise his passport permits. I am no longer lovely. People chatter on in more dialects than I remember. I am visiting my old home on the 5th floor with its salt sea view and terrace of my parakeets. Up the street, the topiary man is still plowing and plowing his field. I'm just going to stand. You have to pardon me, I have a little bit of a cold and a fever and I throw out my back, so doing my best. So I have a series called Tropics, and it has 10 poems that are 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, almost sonnet-like. They're about 15 lines. And so I'm just going to read one of them because 10 is too many. The country was rife with prayer. Slokas, chants, a muzzin's call, an offering, avatar saving coconuts, the excitement of garlands. We worshipped in sunlit synagogues, peeked in altars, saw effigies of Ganesh get sea-swept. Faith was what you celebrated, not ideas themselves, as if belief were just a proof, an everyday calculation of rightness and karma, good deeds that rise from acts. We put our love in contracts. We read our Bibles, Quran, Pentateuch, and Mahabharata, and believed each one. Yet what we listened to was underneath drunk love of gods or God, above the ritual that gives it structure. It hummed between ancient spaces in our worlds. I don't know anything. I believe what parents authorize. Prayer is in our hands. It just shows up. I'm going to read a poem called Church Going, which is about a visit to this little church in Washington State, where I was at a writing space and nothing was really working except, so I was really bored and miserable, and I went to this church one day, and it was terrific. Vespers on a Sunday afternoon. A unified medley of a simple church in a town on a bay, where shorebirds migrate south in autumn and oysters hatch quietly on the shells of others. Oystermen troll from sunset to sundown, the hard blue surface of the steady water, decades true to it. Old men hack at weeds with skies along the roads that seem historic homes and ranch houses. It stretches, it seems, to foggy infinity. Summer visitors leave $1 or $2 in the box up front, sign the register, inscribe their names so they remain forever. Old pews are polished with impeccable shine. Opening the thick red book of Methodist hymns, in this church of every ministry, on any Sunday, some people feel explicit wrongs and gentle disillusionment. The air is so clean here, it feels like divinity. I memorize a view of the old yard behind the church, manicured and golden. It seems too big for anything besides flocks of bears and horses coming in from the beach. We are all too groomed, impeccably serious. The pews fill up. Women wear lipstick and honorable dresses. Men put on their Presbyterian faces. A hunched man in tawny ponytail and moist eyes rises up and sobs, "My wife is 6 weeks dead now." The youngest woman in the congregation puts her arms around him, while the harpist tours Ireland and Scotland, and we all sing, "Love divine, all loves excelling." I recognize the tune, but not the words. The same tune I had whispered out the window to the sea when I was young, wondering which night was the night the book said was silent. And even though it wasn't mine, the song fit then and now as the congregation sang softly all those vowels from 1890. I added lilt, excited to be privy to big feelings. As pastors from other towns down the peninsula, 12 of the 13 residents, the visiting minister and his wife, listen, and old Ned finishes his cry. If love is divine, then what am I, when they are so full of love excelling? I believe in showing up. The sermon starts. I think about what hope is and decide it isn't anything the minister talks about before he's finished. Aren't we already full of hope by coming here? The minister tells us to question everything, so I question how he decided wonder was the main act in this tiny, noble church of unseasonable reason. I think he is saying if we think together without arguing about what we are thinking, we have freedom. But my wonder is not your wonder, I think, and wonder where he's getting all his divinity from. These open-hearted beaches are so pure, they choke me. I prefer the cold, hard pews and visitor seating. I prefer to be deranged and read these pretty prayers as evil in my feet taps out a little more universe. Okay. Going to read one more. Actually. I'm going to read two more, sorry. It's sort of a before and after, you'll figure it out. Pretended homes. In the hummingbird woods where you believed me and eucalyptus smelled like the future, we invented a bridge and walked to the middle, where sky reflected in sea green the tributaries that blended oceans. We found rock libraries of antique books waiting to be spoken open. Polish and Turkish flew in and landed on thin branches. We traded street of crocodiles for snow. We invented a child, utterly and invincible, as if counting what to expect. He questions us now. Where are the facts? Where is dinner clamped on the table, grooved with 1,000 plates? We hand him a list of declensions. We exit rooms from opposite sides. We read him Grimm's and say, these are the tales of life. These are the sounds you will wish to escape. These are the clowns who smile through their teeth. Here are the fast bruising people with big feet. And here the scene shifts. Water sparkles as daylight burns off mist and condensation in the hummingbird woods by the sea green lake that feels like the ocean you will find when you are older, with its tidal glories, its talking mermaids and brave sailors, its lung-tightening heartbeat. We are still a family, we promise, and prove we are parents, with love so disabled it mimics a century-old translation. Here is the pain of the books we traded. Here is a new math you're learning. You will grow into it later. His sentences feel like essays. There is so much buried in them. He turns on the reader like an old man, not a third grader, his accusations buried under spelling mistakes. On the lake in the valley of the moss-soft marriage we used up, fat snow drifts onto my face. You are gathering wood to burn our sadness to. I fall asleep without you, half frozen on a hill on the upper Hudson by a small blue cabin. Our son is with me. Stars leak over the snow into moonlight, sky a cut glass, its silvery apprehensions gone, our marriage over. I show our son pictures and give him music he cries to. I watch the magic of offals in Costa Rica and think I will never be anything but 50% in the beautiful gown our son keeps telling me to wear. I have no body to fill it. This, we tell our son, is marriage. It is fluid blue, and grief is a routine. Okay, so he's 15 now, and he's fine, and and you know, he's a 15-year-old. He's not fun anymore. He's kind of a jerk. This is also about my son. Between the beats. Eyelashes flicker, heedful of my presence in his half-shadow light. His eyes will grow darker and more substantial, solving for X equations of love, only yet still mine alone to ponder. But in 5 years, sooner than he thinks, he will have hazarded grief between reciprocal commonplace cadences of falling for someone. His legs will grow long-limbed. He will become a birch tree climbing out of himself into youth-new hues of wild, impressionistic sky. What is refracted in his eyes the way he wants to see it. This is how time passes in your own loop of whirl. Life is as easy as you make it, I tell him, but don't count on anything but experience and us. The rest is real only in philosophy, cosmic forks and knives clashing, not rhythm in your feet. By then you'll be drafted at 18 into brutalities of men, into oil-hungry strategies of firepower and defense. Sign here to kill cinnamon faces born elsewhere according to fine-tuned small lettering. Here is your government-issued machete. Sign here for your blood blue rules, your green money, or instead the war will be interior. He will ache for fast love too fast to notice it has faded. Slower love finds its voice in conversations of sparrows. Even now he is a bowerbird collecting pretty ideas as he builds his nest away from me. I created his heart, kidneys, fingerprints, lungs, eyes. I put my molecules in his mind. I pause in the gears of age and look at my list. Notice I instruct the plane approach its runway with beautiful uncertainty. The mechanical angle of wings as the pilot pulls gently back, hovering. His feet hit the ground, racing to the next thing. He is a half-composed, time-tricking riff. Drums find their best rhythm between the beats. He tells me and I agree. Love always backflips into your life, I offer, but he is skeptical at 13. Which is worse, he asks, death or heartbreak? I shrug and say only heartbreak ends for the living. I point to bookshelves. Despair fits neatly into verbs, and you can make them bubble, just like love, I say, reluctant to say that fizz is a property of time, but verbs sit on the page forever. The mind at its fastest and most vulnerable sees lost sentences only you can find. Sometimes they are invisible like origami in your soul. An unfolding, folded up feeling of chaos and design. When you become a man, an invented thing, believe me, it is something unusual, that approach to genuine feelings, that hovering. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so next up we have the Poet Laureate of Suffolk County, Long Island, an award-winning poet who's performed poetry internationally, including at the Geraldine R. Dodge Poetry Festival and the Festival International de Poésie de Granada. She's also the 2011 Walt Whitman Birthplace Association Long Island Poet of the Year. And I should just mention, along with Usha Akela, the founder of Matwala, which is a terrific group of South Asian poets. We had a festival here in New York, we had one in Austin, and maybe she will say more about that, but you should look it up online. So let's have a very warm welcome for Pramila Venkateswaran.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to see many of the Matwala poets here. And I guess we'll see more of you in the next few Matwala festivals. I'm going to read from my latest book, The Singer of Alapi. In this book, I memorialize the life of my paternal grandmother. In this first poem called Art by the Way, I mainly think about women poets. Art by the Way. Imagine if the dye had to be made, leaves and flowers plucked, mixed with water and stirred over a hot stove, cooled under the moon, the right branch found and sharpened to dip into the potion. A piece of parchment, dry enough but not too dry, has to be smoothed before the pen can be lifted from the decoction. Wet enough but not drippy, so the words form in neat, thick chunks as the hours pass slowly. So at day's end, if 4 lines are written, it's a feat, especially if dishes have to be washed, laundry hung out to dry, kids fed, and 100 pieces of family life picked up. It must have been the woman with magic who put a guard on watch to brush a few strokes on leaves, the pen spout her life. So imagine the women who couldn't manage it all, let the dye coagulate, the pen stick to the bowl, the parchment vanish into yellow dust. Thank you. For a while I was wondering how to write about colonialism without making it sound like a social tract. And it struck me that all of us, many of us Indians, growing up in middle-class Indian households, we usually heard our fathers declaim in proverbs. And I thought that's probably a direct result of colonialism. So here is my grandmother probably thinking about the husband who's declaiming in proverbs. So I basically linked a whole bunch of them. My husband is ruled by proverbs. Know how they rule us? Punctual. That's what they are. So if you know my car arrives at 9, then you need to serve my food by 8:41, have my shoes polished by 8:55, so I'm ready. Get the place cleaned up today. Why wait until tomorrow? For procrastination is the thief of time. How do you think you got your big house, a car, and servants? My boss sees I don't waste a minute, and I'm a genius at solving his killer and charity's problems. When he smiles, I smell the bonus right away. You can't make hay if you chat with that cousin of yours, always caught in the horns of a dilemma about career, clothes, or radio programs. Keep away from useless neighbors pointing their fingers at me. They should know people in glass houses should not throw stones. Make a list of things to do, don't whine, for the stitch in time saves 9. And stop asking for new saris or hoping for relatives to visit us. As I've said many times, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. I will take you and the children to Tiruchi during the holidays when my boss will be vacationing at a hill station. He has taught me all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Thank you. So I try to recreate many of the dances and the music that my grandmother might have listened to, and she was a musician and she improvised all the time, and I was trying to recreate many of those songs in this book. So one of the poems that I wrote was Kumi Dance. Kumi is a popular South Indian folk song and folk dance. Kumi Dance. It's evening, lamps are alive, temple bells ring. I sashay out in a bright red skirt and a zari top. Sukanya, Radha, and Padlu run to meet me in their finery. Skirts flying, we dance in a circle, clapping as we move our hips and twirl, plaits flying, steps beating the earth awake to bells and song. Clap, 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 we dance the kumi. The whole land claps the kumi, round and round. We call our sweethearts, the ones promised to us, to fill us with joy, more passion than we know. Soon it'll be time to wear our mother's wisdom. Clap, 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 we dance the kumi. The whole land claps the kumi, round and round. We are birds widening the sky of earth, feet flying, skirts skimming the ground, anklets ringing, faces bathed in jasmine and sweat, breath in our bodies bursting the hooks, holding our blouses in place. Clap, 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 we dance the kumi. The whole land claps the kumi, round and round. So I'm going to end with this poem. It's called Diwali. So since we are anticipating Diwali, which is just around the corner, here is this poem. Would you sleep if the firecrackers you'd hoarded could be pilfered by sneaky siblings? In pitch dark, you would perch on the street, a hawk, keeping careful count of sparklers, snake bombs, chakras, and witches' horrors that could blast eardrums because you cared only about the romance of a hissing firecracker, colorful sparkles falling like petals and fading, oh, so quickly that you had to dive into your trove to blast the next magical one and the next, your want rising. Dawn dared not steal your thunder. Thank you.
Thank you, Pramila. And please come on in. Some seats up here, I think.
There are 2 seats over there.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. And many of you might know that the richness of Indian aesthetics, but there's something in Indian aesthetics called rasa theory. And when we talk about rasa, we mean the flavor or taste or mood. And I think that you will hear that over the course of this evening, we're going to hear a lot of different kinds of rasa, a lot of different moods and voices, which is particularly exciting. All right, so next up, we have someone who's been in New York for a long time, is in fact the first non-Irishman to win the Patrick Kavanagh Prize in Poetry. He has an MFA from Columbia University, and he's a Kashmiri-born poet who divides his time between New York, Dublin, and Kashmir. Let's have a warm welcome for Rafiq Katwari. Rafiq.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me back there? Yeah. Yes? Yeah. Okay, so you're my target audience. It's a privilege to be here in this gathering of very accomplished poets. And as Ravi mentioned, my first master's was from the New School, and my second was from Columbia, where Ravi and I were the 2 darkies in our class. It was at Columbia that I became a radical Islamic terrorist. I have a massive head cold, so before I left home I had a shot of whiskey. It's wearing off, so I might have to just sort of bolt after I do my gig. You will join me in the neighborhood Irish bar. I have one poem for you, and it's the title of the poem is driving Lolita in the world's most militarized zone. It's a privilege for me to give a voice to the deliberately silenced in Kashmir, a cause which IAAC embraces. There are a few things I'd like to set up. Dal Lake is a lake in the Kashmir Valley. Zabarwan is a mountain range, the foothills of the Himalayas. Half-widows are women who do not know whether their husbands who have been disappeared are dead or alive. And Zero Bridge is actually the name of a bridge in Srinagar where I was born, a Scorpio at midnight. Driving Lolita in the world's most militarized zone. A boy, I hid in Grandpa's study. An art dealer, he loved books with gilded edges. Aristotle to Zola, all stuck together in the humidity. I snuck low out to his black Chevy, rifled for the dirty bits, should have looked harder, I guess. Drove her away for a spin, teen tunes swirling in my head. I want to hold your hand. We cruised the boulevard, concertina wire-hedged Dal Lake, polished by a soft breeze. A houseboat on the lake's hem, its nameplate read Lolta, and I missing. To let, signs posted everywhere, and on the Zabarwan range, white turbans on peaks, and Om in giant letters plowed by jackboots into the heart of the Himalayan foothill. A paisley-shaped river sobbed through a dazed valley. Amputated tree trunks screamed, reams of plastic choked in icy streams. Jersey barriers fenced the Shalimar, bullet-ridden Toyotas in the bazaar. An ancient Sufi shrine oddly gutted, its rich latticework lost. New architecture showed no awe for nature. Half-widows wailed, clawed at mass graves, yearning for their disappeared. Nightingales sang of joy. Keats said that nightingales do not sing of sorrow, they sing of joy, even in the darkest of times. Nightingales sang of joy, not sorrow. At Zero Bridge, lilacs by bunkers bloomed. A soldier on the trigger showered pellets on the face of a nymphette, light of her mother's eye. Nothing can be seen, the nymphette cried, as far as the eye can see. A lord of the skies broke the sound barrier. Scared, stray dogs howled. In Grandpa's black Chevy, Lolita slid from my lap as we finished our ominous odyssey. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Rafiq. All right. And so, as I mentioned, we'll have a couple more, and then we can have a brief intermission. All the poets do have books, and we'd be happy to sign them, either before or after. So next up, we have, coming from New Haven, Yale art historian and the winner of the Great Indian Poetry Collective's Emerging Poets Prize, and someone whose work has appeared in such journals and magazines as Caravan, Diode, Lumina, the New England Review, and the Literary Review. And in 2008, our poet, Subhashini Kaligopla, published her first book of poems, Bird of the Indian Subcontinent, which owes its existence to being in New York City. So let's have a warm welcome from Subhashini.
Well, thank you for that, Ravi, and thank you all for being here. Can you hear me? Okay, all right, good. What, sorry, what was that?
She would like it a little bit louder.
Okay, all right, how is this? Okay, yeah, it's such a beautiful day outside, so although, you deserve even more praise for being indoors for poetry. And thank you, Ravi, our impresario, for putting together this impressive group of poets. I'm honored to be reading with all of you, and thank you to the IAAC for putting together this LitFest. So, I will be reading the first poem in my first book of poetry, and this poem is special to me because it brings together my three loves: art history, poetry, and New York City. So, this book was most of the poems in this book were written in New York City. I came into my own as a poet in New York City. The poems were edited in New York City. The manuscript went through numerous revisions in New York City. So New York City is very important to me and the poems. And the first poem is also engaging with a work of art. It's in response to a painting by the iconic American painter Edward Hopper, for whom New York City is also important. So the poem is in dialogue with this painting, and the painting is at the Whitney Museum of Art, and I sort of fell in love with this painting, and it's haunted me for a long time. I don't want to go on and on about that. It's a painting which features a woman. She is in a room by herself, and she's looking out at the city. Morning in a city. Not beautiful. A species of beautiful, composed of well-made parts. Not erotic either, or arousing. There's no quiver, no thrum in the groin, no blood rush, though the picture has all the makings of desire. Part pin-up, part porn, femme fatale with none of the flourishes. In profile. White terry cloth towel raised to her chest, far from the room's blue enclosure, yet standing stolid by the window. The city resuming its business beneath her. She doesn't answer the gaze from a sumptuous bed. No pillows plumped behind her. No servant or feline in attendance. There's no invitation here, no transaction, for the bed is abandoned. The room's cool light, the bed's narrow proportions are too small for her kind of desire, for the ambitions she savors before taking off her hat, folding her dress, and letting it rest for the night on the back of the chair. So cities are important to this book. Cities are places for flaneuring, for looking at buildings, for inhabiting space, for exploring the self. And they're sort of chock full of people, especially this city. It's getting more and more crazy. And for all of its craziness, I don't think I could live in any other place but urban environments. And another city is prominent in this book, and this is the Indian city, Hyderabad. In the past 10 years, I've been spending quite a bit of time in Hyderabad. I left India when I was very young, and so I didn't really grow up in India. I didn't know how to navigate myself as an adult in India. But because of my work in art and architectural history, I've been spending time in Hyderabad. And this is the place from which, in the past 10 years, I've launched my explorations into the subcontinent. And it is my second home, if you will. And so the next two poems are set in Hyderabad. And one other thing that I want to say is I suppose this book is about longing, and it's about loss. It's about longing for the beloved. But these places are also reminders of the beloved, and places and objects make the beloved present even when the beloved is absent. How sly the heart. Send an innocuous little text, she whispered. Make it short and flirty. No strings, no needs, no plangency. Just a thinking of you in Hyderabad sort of thing. I was tempted, sitting across from mother as I was, cut off from male company, except for the telephone men who wandered through the house in their hapless way, while we, mother and I, devour hundreds of pages with our tea, swallow fistfuls of warm air with our bread, and watch the honey eaters sting the red throats of the hibiscus. This is the best time. Flocks of birds pass overhead. The heat subsides. Now is the best time. Scrawny-necked cormorants move with quick wing beats. Egrets are slow and stately, intimate in groups of 2s and 3s. And the parakeets race. But before you can find their sound, a noise between harsh and kind, they've gone. If equanimity should find me, it'll find me at this place, at this hour, between 6 and 7, when the wanting stops and I'm happy to sit and watch and have exactly what's laid out for me. Okay, this will be the last poem. Also Hyderabad. Hyderabad. Go visit if you haven't. Green Villa. In the late afternoon, I survey your estate. A robin pecks in the front lawn. Perennias disturb the hibiscus. By 6, the geckos are out, prowling the wall, hanging by the porch. Soon the gardener and his wife will come. The garden gate opens without a sound and shuts with a clang. The neighbor's fat labs bark hello. I may walk across or just look up and say a word, something to say, I see you in the world. Along the road's asphalt, tall trees spread red canopies and a familiar fragrance. Flame of the forest I retrieve from a distant place, Gulmohar. To be alive in this heat, to be so unstinting with flower, is to say, being alive is reward enough for hardship. Then, in the doctor's yard, a laburnum in bloom, chandeliers of yellow, pendulous yellow, the world is yellow, the stars must be this yellow. 7 is the time to see the neighborhood on the main road and its arteries, like the imported dog and his trainer, a skinny German shepherd, young and uncertain, and the man stringing the unfamiliar English into an unbroken song. Sit, sit, stay, stay, good. Dog and man finding their place in a world where desire is the only master. And who says who keeps the world and who loses his place? Turning back, the road is calmer, though some still walk in the dark, and the temple speakers emit piped devotions. In the last lane, beware of dog, as two young shepherds hurl themselves at the gate, no matter who passes. From the garden gate, a single solar lamp lights the path. The air is humid and the flagstones wet. The house is empty and the birds quiet. The gardener has come and gone. The evening's work can begin. You left me a world when you left. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, we'll finish this first half with another remarkable poet. I hope that you're enjoying the breadth and skill and craftsmanship of everyone that we're hearing. Next up, coming all the way from Boston and named by NBC News on their 2015 list of Asian American poets to watch. This next poet's work has appeared in Agni, Poetry International, Field, Prairie Schooner, and many other journals. And I really recommend her book, Visiting Indira Gandhi's Palmas. Please have a warm welcome, and I think she's also still the editor at The Drum, a literary journal. Let's have a warm welcome for Kiran Kapoor.
Thank you so much, Ravi, and to the festival folks who worked so tirelessly to have us all here. And to all of you, thank you for coming. I'm going to start with a new poem, which was inspired in part by the ancient Greek practice of starting any endeavor, especially a literary endeavor, with an invocation of some kind. And I think recently, just with the news and the state of the world, the idea of summoning some greater power to face things has been much on my mind. So this is, in that tradition, a sort of summoning, but by way of the landscapes of my childhood. I ride upon a tiger. My bones are made of whales, and when whales die, they're songs. My eyes are pits of mangoes, scraped clean by teeth. From my feet plunge 50 streams. The rush, the cold, exposes underworlds of fear. 4 stomachs cannot explain my hungers. I have devoured myself. I tread upon my loves. Strung with a necklace of hummingbirds, my hair in braids, my braids are tongues. Atop my head, a crown of 40 languages, all spoken at once. My breastplates gleam and thrum, 2 armies marching on. You who extract the marrow and the light, you who suck the sun and leave the bone eroded colder. Demon, disease, dear fated one, do you hear? I will come to you on the back of a tiger. I grew up partly in Hawaii, and when I tell people that, they either say, oh, it must be so beautiful there, or, oh, is it really that beautiful there? And I'm here to tell you it's exactly that beautiful there. But it's also a lot of other things, and this poem tries to get at some of those. There are a lot of initials in the poem, so you'll hear L and M and J, and those are all initials. And of course, there's plenty of I, that most troubled initial. It's called Girls, Girls, Girls. Along the strip in Waikiki, past sailor bars and clubs, the length of beach where lipstick sunsets smudged and magazines would shoot and caption paradise. Posh hotels where M and I would wait for some nice man to buy us a drink from the bar. We'd watch the women walk like they were stars on stage, dress like they couldn't wait to be undressed, leaning over into idling cars. Out on the west side of the island, Jay tells me any man she dates is more likely to hit her than pay for her dinner. Teenagers holding babies spit at us when we stare. What you looking at? You got nothing. I have nothing, sobs Elle today on the phone. I know it isn't my fault, but when I think of how I let him do it, over and over, even helped him cover it up, I hate myself. I'm thinking of the man who owned the noodle shop, the man who'd always sit with me and chat about Hanoi, warm water in canals, moms on bikes with babies tied down front and back, how to tell a ripe papaya. I saw him on the news a few years back for smuggling women in refrigerated trucks. He owned the bar called Girls, 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 a few doors down from where he served me pho. The one whose sign was made of neon legs that kicked and kicked until they were a stain of light. We liked to swim along the South Shore when the tide was right. You had to time your dive or crack your head against the reef. More than once, a girl washed up. Sometimes they named her on the news. M and I drank kamikazes on the lanai of the new Sheraton. The chief of security coming out to check we were the right sort of girls, regaling us with stories of the wallets stolen off of businessmen by ladies visiting their rooms, a theft they let her blame on the hotel maid. I hate Elle's voice, mine. When I think of how many times have I said it? How many times have I said nothing at all, or tried to explain why we aren't at home, the right sort of girl and the wrong, why we're all out under the orange streetlights. A good part of my first book is about partition. It was the central story in our house, the central ghost in our house. And when I finally got around to finding some way to write about it, I ended up feeling more that I wrote about the ways people talk about it than about the thing itself. And this poem is a little bit about that. It's called History with a Melon Cleaver. This might be one of the only rooms I've ever read this poem in where I didn't have to give historical background before I read this poem. Usually there's about 5 minutes of detail, but you all know. History with a Melon Cleaver. They stood in line to buy a slice of melon, my father and my uncle in cantaloupe season. When the boy in front reached out to pay, the melon seller waved his cleaver. This was Lahore in cantaloupe season. Summer was working up its heat. With one hand, the melon seller waved his cleaver over a bright, thick slab of fruit. Summer was only beginning, but already the days had grown hot. A cool slab of sweet melon was all two boys could want. But already the days had grown heated, when the boy in front reached out to pay. Chilled melon was all two boys could want, or so my uncle claimed. When the boy reached out to pay, the melon seller brandished his cleaver. My uncle paused before claiming. With the other hand, he stabbed the boy with a dagger. The melon seller brandished his cleaver, drawing all eyes from the fruit. He stabbed the boy with a tiny dagger, putting his other hand to use. All eyes flew to the cleaver. The boy fell on our feet. No one was watching the other hand. This is how my uncle told it. The boy fell on our feet. My uncle's voice was full of wonder. This was the way he told it, as if a comet had passed overhead. My uncle's voice was full of wonder. The boy was reaching out to pay, as if a comet had passed over my father and uncle in melon season. For survivors. Begin with a seed. Begin with the father and the mother, your first Adam and Eve. Begin with what fruit falls from the tree. You can live on bruised and sweet. Begin with a monsoon breeze. Begin with a flood. Begin with miles of silk and mud and the wings of cranes and the stilt-like legs of a house with no one left inside. with a young wife burying her sons, and books riding the tide until they're caught and their philosophies dried out on laundry lines. Begin with a pen, begin with a cage, begin with the memory of what they said while you tried to turn your face away. Begin with bargains, with stains, the names of towns built over graves. Begin with your life burned down, with the God who hasn't been seen since the burning bush, and the goddess who steps into the flames like a housewife into a dress, or a fairy tale of hair so long that love climbed up. Begin by putting your mouth to the mouth of your dreams. Begin with tendons, teeth. Begin with what never goes away, a highway pricked with gravel and stars, low beams on wind and trucks and emptiness. Begin, it starts with being, ends like a ringing bell. Begin, begin, ring yourself. I'll just read one last one, which is about being dead, and also about being American. From the afterlife. I wanted to be a bone, white, like the Taj Mahal, hard as a Puritan, when vain and wish are stripped, still able to rattle the essential notes. But no music gets made when you pit yourself against ideas of yourself. Dust suits me better. Gray-brown fleck I can mix, move into the smallest space, spark the grittiest tunes. Divide me into 50 states, winsome, wondering, crazed, my face scattered by teaspoon. Over the great basin of played-out mines and salts rising in a haze. Over hard-farmed heartland, the bent, fair-headed wheat, the combine's cloud, silt along the fat lip of a riverbed, semis hissing and grumbling in tongues. I can still feel the hum of the telephone wires running from one life to another. I filled those lines, in case a story is a body, in case we lose our place. Hello, friend. I can touch everything, but can't stop thinking. Turns out, thoughts granulate. Turns out, I never was a girl. I was all those girls. A girl statue, torch raised, you know the one, standing in the harbor, wearing a sari. The tide foams up. Now, I'm so much dust, I'm a continent. Absorbing a thimbleful of mother, angry powder, laughing specks, froth, filth, lover, crying cinders, particles of mineral wind. I'm proof that nothing is lost. You can breathe me in.
All right, thank you so much, Karen. So what a great start to the first half. As I mentioned, we will just take about 10 minutes to stretch our legs. There is some refreshments, have some cheese and wine, but don't flee, please, because we have an entire second half of terrific poets. Will be a chance for Q&A, book signings, and all of that. So thank you so much. Let's get a hand for all the poets in the first half.
Yeah, is that your how you do it as well?
I think it's double O. I think it's double O.
No, actually, my cousin right spell it double O.
Yeah, double O.
There's a divide just that way. Yes.
Where is he?
Now he's in Massachusetts near me. Yeah. But he lived for Delhi in Delhi for many years before.
Yeah, that's where we're from. Her mother's a Kapoor.
Oh, hi. Wonderful. Oh, hi, nice to meet you.
Here with our second half, which is going to be just as good as the first. And starting us off in this first portion of the second half is wonderful poet and diplomat, who writes and translates and publishes poetry and essays in English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. So quite a kind of polylinguist. And he's published 16 collections thus far, including The Elephants of Reckoning, which won the 1994 Patterson Prize in the United States. His first book came out in India, Coconuts on Mars. Let's have a very warm welcome from Indran Amritanayagam. Indran!
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you, IAAC, for this generous invitation. I'm delighted to be reunited with India today. I was born in Ceylon, a country that no longer exists, named Sri Lanka now. And I had the privilege of commentary on my first book of poems from A.K. Ramanujan, and he said I was a welcome addition to the poetry of migration, so that phrase stuck with me, the poetry of migration. So my next book, actually, coming out in the US, will be called The Migrant States, a sort of a play on the United States, but also the migrant stating, the migrant speaking. And so here's a poem from that new book, which will be out next year, to kick off, The Migrant's Reply. We have been running for so long. We are tired. We want to rest. We don't want to wake up tomorrow and pack our bags. We have gone 10,000 miles. We have boarded a rowboat, tugboat, bus, freight train. We have a cell phone and some bread. Our eyes are dry. Our breath needs washing. What next? You're putting up a wall on your southern flank. What an irony. The country that accepts refugees does not want us. We qualify. We have scars, and our host governments hunted at least some of us. The rest fled in fear. Gangs do not spare even the children. White vans took away our uncles, our cousins. Do you think they have been made into plowshares? Aye, what are you saying? Too easy to wear our hearts in these words, in slings, on our faces, furrowed, perplexed. What happened to kindness to strangers? Why do we have to be herded like prisoners held in a holding camp? We are human beings, and like you, in safer countries, we have the same obligation to save ourselves and our children. Oh, the children, look at them. Give them food and school, a new set of clothes. Give them a chance. Whether you are red or blue, the eye of the hurricane does not discriminate. We are your tumbling weeds, hurling cars, flooding banks, and we are diggers of the dikes. We can teach you so many languages and visions. You would learn so much, you would never ever say, lock us up. The Migrant's Reply. It actually forms a part of a series of poems that, well, and the book is called The Migrant State. Now going back in time to an earlier poem called Kiss, and this a little bit about the northern part of the island of Sri Lanka, Jaffna. But written actually in Hawaii, so I share Hawaii with you. I went to high school there. Actually, I was at Punahou. I don't know where you went to school, but Same, okay. We should get together. Yeah. I was there with Barry Obama at the same time.
Barry.
Yeah. You know Barry?
Barry Obama.
He edited the poetry, the literary journal the year after I left. Anyway, that's losing my time. To get back to the story, the main migrant story. Anyway, this poem's called Kiss. Kissing your lips, I try to forget roses or the fruit of palmyra trees, sweet and strong, tongue lolling upon tongue, heart beating against heart beating. These are my words signifying our human bodies, which poetry does not capture. The absolute desire I have to kiss your lips on this hot and sunny afternoon. I do not know how much longer I can walk about the garden kissing roses, or perambulate the toddy tavern of my dreams where black faces and white toddy mix in black and white memories of Jaffna, Sri Lanka, my Tamil country, far away on an island across the sea. Far away and far away, the palmyra fruit and your lips. To drink toddy now, to kiss your rosy lips now, to uproot the roses in my garden and offer them upon my tongue now. To fly to Sri Lanka and grab the last fruit on the tree before history throws the Tamils into the sea, as is said it will do, before all this and everything else, before the apocalypse. I do so sincerely wish, though my words may not fit, to rest my head in your hair and kiss your lips. Right. So for the first time, thank you. Another poem of islands. I'm born on an island. I moved to the island of England, and then I moved to the islands of Hawaii, and then to Manhattan, where I spent 10 years here, and then the mainland of Brooklyn. So anyway, I've been in islands and island stories. So a poem about that, and also about the loss of the language. You must love the land when you leave to build your house on the sea. Love what's lost, the mango tree burning in the garden, the curious noose of the familiar coat of arms. Love the ball turning strong, spinning in a dark, faraway land. Love the tongue you'll never again speak, that wrapped you and bled you and dried up some every day on the other side of the sea. Thank you. And now I'll finish with two poems, one from Uncivil War and one from Coconuts on Mars. The poem from Uncivil War is, this is sort of a history in a way of the Sri Lankan Civil War, which, like all wars, are uncivil. This one's called Fire Department. Where is your village burning? Where is your village mined fields? Where is your village blasted in crossfire, wounded under jungle trees? Where is your village running across marshes, shot in the back? Where is your village waving white flags, frisked, registered, supervised in a camp? Where is your village blowing up army friskers, other villages? Where is your village? Toronto, Berlin, Tamil Nadu. Where is your village? Madagascar as option has not been discussed. Where is your village? Hasta la vista, special envoy. Where is your village? Burning. Thank you. And then I'll finish with a poem from Coconuts on Mars. I'm very happy. This is my first book published in India. It came out earlier this year from Poetry Wala, and it's a thrill to be united to my Mecca, or my grand metropolis, you know, from the islander's perspective and so on. You look to India as a kind of, like people look to New York in America or something. Anyway, let's see, I'll read a poem called Living Will, which happens to be the last poem in the book. The book tells a story too. So there are a couple of characters who show up in earlier poems who show up here as well. One is, her name is Pauline, and anyway, Living Will. One day I will sit down with my soul and write that I have loved every bird that flew, every monkey on the branch, every elephant charging through the grass. I will say I love you as much as the baby gecko scampering past my foot, the snake rustling under the wood, cut and stacked in my yard. I will say I've loved every creature, every song, every turn in the road, and I will be lying with my eyes open and my eyes closed. I am not God. I'm not even a dog loyal to his master who misses him blind like his daughter in Lima, which I call at night until the next time we meet. In dreams we chat cheek to cheek, remembering always that in paradise there are no trains or roads or seas or death, no going away, no arriving, doors and gardens open, souls who come and go, smiling, and all the angel, all birds, all dolphins, all men and women in song, dancing, and why not reciting the Song of Solomon, the epic poems, the love songs that consoled when we set off on the roads, hopped on trains and aeroplanes, got caught in traffic in our head, said goodbye before saying hello. Did I know you down there? You were the greengrocer I walked past going to school in London. Oh, my dear, how beautiful you are, Pauline, with ripe red hair, who shared the religion prize with me at St. Vincent's on Blandford Street. But you may be alive still, and I'm not ready to meet my maker, to be plucked from the cycle of rebirth, not yet. I have poems to compose, children to raise, earth to cultivate. Come back later, angel. I have my will to revise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Indran. All right. So next up, and it's such an esteemed bunch that we have poet and novelist and the winner of the Catherine A. Morton Poetry Prize, the author of 3 books. Her poetry collection, You Darling Things, was named a new and noteworthy selection by the New York Times. Her first book, published in 2008, was Beast for the Chase. Let's have a very warm welcome for Monica Farrell. Monica!
Hi, thank you so much, Robbie, for that and for including me today. And thank you to the IAAC for this amazing festival. So many truly wonderful poets, some of whose names I've heard over and over, before, and now I'm completely mesmerized by your work and can't wait to dig in deeper. And thanks to you all for sticking it out on this gorgeous October evening. So I don't normally read this one, but I wanted to sort of, I think it's probably most formally connected to my South Asian inheritances because it's in the form of a hustle. Although I've broken a couple of rules, so don't get angry at me. I'm telling you in advance. There will be no scheme rhyme here, but in most other respects, it meets the criteria. This is called In the Rain. In the rain I stood, a leaf detached from its tree by the lake, where I waited aimlessly for your face to appear in the rain. You were always golden, a shower of insignificant things. I, a Danae, coiled up yet somehow powerless against such rain. When you talked, words spilled from your mouth like a herd of flies, black, green, and shiny as a branch just washed by rain. Once I left my room, shut the door, wore my green child slicker, so I could come to your house and say, please let me in from the rain. What did you think then? Your eyes flickered like eagle's beads over me, or the dice of eager men, licked by spit or in indifferent rain. Then the door slid back on its route, and I entered among clocks and papers to the porch with its ashtray and tin cup filled with rain. Those are the tears of the world, you said, and laughed, as if it was funny. I think perhaps you have never stood outside all night for someone in the rain. I think you have never watched a river, say the Hudson, and seen those lights floating on the water, and known your dead were now rain. You are simple as the child playing with his India rubber ball, while I am the darning needle of this story, borne down a gutter by rain. Sit down, you said, a grinning death's head. You must be frozen. With cold X-ray vision, you saw my skin where it lay soaked with rain, all those hollows of breast and bone, shivering in pricked goose flesh, that unlike the goose's was never meant to perfectly dispel rain, nor let me take a few steps off from you and say nothing but some inarticulate cries, fly sorrowing away in this rain. Well, those are the kinds of stories that make you yawn and gloat. Kinderlieder, for those still amazed by the chthonic power of rain, to sway our moods and mimic our tears, or bring forth an enormous, unwarranted heart simply by feeding one rootwork with its rich, wet, dark. I actually did not realize the word India was in that poem, so I was like, I thought it was in there somewhere. It just shows you how much people can be so unfair in lying about poems. I read this poem to the person it's about, and he was like, I have stood outside all night for someone in the rain. I was like, really? Because I haven't. You're a better person than me. So I'm going to read 3 more poems. They're going to be from the new book. And the first one is called The King with His Queen. And I'm very much taken by mythological stories and legends and history, and they tend to inform my work a lot. So in this case, there was a real king who basically, his wife died, and he was so overcome by grief that wherever the funeral procession stopped, he erected a little shrine there. So I was, tried to imagine what it was like to feel that level of grief. So the king with his queen. My victory, my triumph, my memory, my fabulous speed, my kingdom, my forest fire, my pure flash flood in a thimble, my morning orison, my dovecote, my insurrection, my soaked bales of hay, my great bane. Throbbing, ruinous thing, you scent of autumn and its dark bowl, whose waters brim over everything and change it all to bone. My excellent marksman, my kennel's guard, who feeds the starving scores and plucks out their motes. They blink and, overcome by gratefulness, say nothing, just like your hands, my sister in hospice, at midnight with black dress trailing. Let me tell you, your funeral in the pewter rain was like holding my breath and with quiet tread, following into the room where you were dressing, vapor in the old blind mirror. Love, all the messages brought down by your gold-throated angels have come out garbled and wrought. Tell me one 5-letter word, how I may survive this era of red leaves, the poaching season, without my chief of the hunt, without my legion, my bowl of ocean, my delicious crystal chess piece who always captured her beleaguered king. You were my lake's smile as it rises out of darkness, under the burgeoning stars. And still, my candelabra's one stubborn wick, when all the porters are down the hall dozing, and the castle hardens into a hard knot of blood, aching to pass through the contracted valve. You are the dance of shadows in the drunken room, and its invitation with outstretched fingers. So I'll read 2 more. I got a physical a few years ago, probably time for another one, but it's one of those things that you have annually when you're a child, and then years go by, and you're like, I don't want to know. If it's not broken, please don't tell me about it. So everything's fine, don't worry. I went in, it's all good. But I started thinking about that word, physical, and what it really means. So, physical. I am older now, and my eyesight is getting better. But I confess my lungs and heart are shot. Someone could drive me in a pickup out to the lake and push me in. I wouldn't even complain as I floated out, arms extended, tangling in milfoil and puzzle grass, and the rusted out remains of vehicles that passed into sleep years ago. The body is a temple, and in this body I have sown a lot of dark. I have sown seeds of want. They looked like dried sand dollars, but were soft and opened up afterwards inside. My body was a factory for crystal ichors that came out through my eyes and were caught by the thirsty hands of air. My tongue was a rowboat. It rowed me across silences, then sat empty and useless, wooden in a corner. I breathed dust, dust till my people could make bricks from its inexhaustible supply. And what was the point of all this industry, Doctor? What once was valuable went wrecked with use, and nobody got any richer. The world's wealth is finite as oil, and everybody finally gives way to nightmares that scatter fast as clouds. Yet every day I'm at it, hammer and tongs, working the mind's loom and the bellows of the lungs, feeding all the dogs in the kennels of my heart, down to the newest and littlest one. And here you sit with your stethoscope and that blip, blip meant to measure my electricity, how it mounts and wanes, irregular as waves, crossing a fathomless ocean for no reason other than that's where they will go. Surely there must be times you doubt your oath. What is physical is what is natural, which is to say, in either case, it wants to give birth to more, spewing out shrimps and runts of the litter and lace-like microbes in an endless parade which no one is watching, I suppose, save God. There is the here, and there is the now, and at the place they intersect and an X marks the spot, there is sometimes also a little bubble called breath. And when the bubble is present, we call this life. If it bursts, we call this that other, the dark country. Surely there must have been times when you touched the fragrant, frangible edge of that bubble and wanted nothing more than to puncture it. When the metal of your instruments sang in your ears like the serpents who licked Hippocrates clear, till all you could hear was the language of the deathless, and beneath that, their approach. Okay, so the last poem I'll read is called Poetry. It's the closest I have to what poets call Ars Poetica, which is a poem about, it's a Latin phrase meaning the craft of poetry. Poets sometimes write about what poetry means to them or how their process of writing it. So this is as close as I get, the very imaginatively titled Poetry. There is nothing beautiful here, however I may want it. I can't spin a crystal palace of this thin air, weave a darkness plush as mole fur with my tongue, however I want. Yet I am not alone in these alleys of vowels, which comfort me, as the single living nun of a convent is comforted by the walls of that catacomb she walks at night, lit by her own moving candle. I am not afraid of mirrors or the future, or even you, lovers, wandering cow-fat and rutting in the gardens of this earthly verge, where I too trod, a sunspot, parasol shaded, kin to the trees, the bees, the color green. Thanks.
Monica Farrell, thank you, Monica. All right, next up, coming from Connecticut, we have a poet, teacher, activist, and publisher of Uganda Press, the author of 4 books of poems, and has done a remarkable amount with poetry, but he lists the work he's done with 10-year-olds in Stanford schools as among his most important and memorable work. Let's have a warm welcome for Ralph Nazareth.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you, IAAC, for inviting me into this extraordinary circle of poets. What a gift. Without these poets and without the audience out there, we're all incomplete. And those lips, Indran? How could I achieve it without text on a page, like you? It's amazing. For many of you, probably this is the first time you have the occasion to hear an Indian Catholic poet. This Indian Catholic is still looking for the Indian in him. He's died in the world Catholic. By the way, this little description of me, it says that I list my years doing poetry with 10-year-olds in Stanford schools is among my most memorable. I hadn't thought of this, but Suman selected this, I guess. It's really wonderful. This little girl, who must be now a 44-year-old woman, 1987, she wrote this the very first year I taught these 10-year-olds in a Stanford school. I've never forgotten these 6 lines. The rainbow has separated. The animals have died. Kill, 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 says he. There is no earth. There is no sky. There is nothing. And the other epigraph I will use to get into my poems is this line. It says, "Don't let the bastards grind you down." I don't know who said it, but someone said it. Centerpiece. You have waited long for this exquisite moment. Now when everyone is gone, quietly you leave. There's something to be said for this. First you prepare yourself to be alone. Then when everyone else is gone and the billboards on the freeways, the culverts under overpasses, the pneumatic legs of bridges, life support systems buckle, when the earth and water are mined, air shot, and the wild wind rapes the work of human hands, and your voice, measuring the field in pieces, sounds out with its clanking wings, shells of precincts, scales walls of former habitations, deranged in empty schoolyards and meat markets, picks through glaring dish antennae on radio towers, returns the first time, and again the last time, a crow without a twang of resonance. You leave without looking back. But you have known it all along, Aniruddha. In the sinking ocean of your mind, you felt it coming over the rim, the slow build-up and peaking, an order of perfect things, unstained by the breath of man or the heart's fond dalliance. In Bombay, the sun dims. You squat on the tetrapods that stay the Arabian Sea and watch the crab pick up your cigarette butt. Far behind you, fixed in nightlight, the world, the centerpiece, glows in the sky's gallery. Not a hairline of meaning, the last collage. Windows and eyebrows, books, keys to cities, bureaucrats, a masquerade under a bodhi tree, open mouths, used artificial hearts, fires on the Ganges, and man, your reflections in the mirrors of Mocambo as you sip sweet lassi and whisper, India is lost, Greece forgotten, and America irrelevant. Where shall I go, Sasha, my dear old council wolf, looking for my ox? I'm still looking for that ox. We all are, I suppose. This is called a prayer. It has a little epigraph from St. Augustine, if you all remember that, Lord, make me chaste, but not yet. Do not ferret me out, O Lord. Do not grab me by the throat and tell me to forgive the southern boys, this brood of vipers, these whited sepulchres, the very same that stripped Anita and picked her bare, tried the damnedest to castrate Billy C., riding their mortal horses, winking and blinking, hissing and lying through their jaundiced teeth. Lord, please do not force me to embrace these men. It's true, as you say, they are my brothers, they are part of me. Indeed, they are no worse than me. Look away, Lord, as I drip my venom, vent my spleen, spew my poison for a few more vicious hours. Lord, make me chaste and forgiving, but not today, please. O Lord of mercy and compassion, please, and not yet. I'd come to, this is a bit of prose, I'd come to hate the NRA and Charlton Heston, my childhood idol, hoary patriarch, bearing the tablets, parting the Red Sea to usher his people to freedom. But finally, when it came down to it, I couldn't rebut their belief that the problem is not with the gun, but with the finger that pulls the trigger. What did I have to say to the Second Amendment nuts wanting to refashion the dollar to read, "In guns we trust"? And what indeed did I have to say to the atheist fanatics on the other side that believed "In God we trust" was an abomination, if not merely to mutter the problem is not with God, but with men who use his name for their own gain? It is thus that guns and God came to dwell side by side in my brain. However, I wasn't so befuddled as not to realize that no amount of vigilance was too much to stop us short of the point of no return. God took up the gun and said, "Let there be fire." So it was. And he said, "Ha ha! That is good." Well, just to break the mood a little bit, not to be so serious, this is called Orientation for New Immigrants. I imagine it is relevant in our times. So you want to fit in. Okay then. The first step you must take is to learn to say fuck without blushing. Say fuck and once more fuck. And not wilt every time you hear it, which would be every other step, as your American counterparts take it out on whatever's in their path. The fucking door, the fucking tree, the fucking bush. No, not the president, of course. God bless America. But the bush that just sits there and doesn't do anyone any harm. Doesn't declare dead or alive or bring him on. Strut on decks of warships and borrowed fighter pilots' gear. Doesn't proclaim mission accomplished in the bud like a premature ejaculation. Doesn't chant ad nauseam, "We will prevail," and all options are on the table. You are with us or against us. God is on our side. It's just an innocuous, unremarkable, ordinary, plain as fucking plain can be bush. If you wish to go deeper into this culture, to climb the Trump Tower past it, be top dog, you may not want to stop with fuck. Go further, the whole hog and enchilada, as they say, the whole fucking 9 yards, and practice say fuck, piss, shit as often as you hear them. Practice, practice. Practice makes fucking perfect. I'll read 2 more poems, and thank you again. Elegy, with apologies to Zbigniew Herbert. Finally, when stock was taken and the accounts squared, it wasn't clear how much this young man really knew. He had been less diligent than his buddy Horatio, stolid, entirely reliable, blessed with unfailing memory, constructing the world piece by syllogism in his mind, with no room for non sequiturs. And never had the rough and tumble of the kid on the next block, 40 they called him, brash and brassy, but with a good heart, who later came to pick through the bloody treasure of his Elsinore, fix the sewers and unionize the prostitutes. He was mostly wrapped in a pale cast of thought, and with little Latin, less Greek, and not a word of Sanskrit, had skipped around whole constellations, Valmiki, Vyasa, Homer, Dante, Cervantes, Rabelais, Tolstoy, and yes, Proust, and never had the patience or stomach to hear Molly B. soliloquize. So what story would his old friend tell the world that this young prince, this heavy cloud, this lost soul who had let slip through his desperate fingers the sweet, sad love of his delicate youth, had done nothing, but merely looked into the heart of things and had concluded, at best provisionally, a little something about the fall of sparrows, or the passage of kings through the guts of a beggar, and standing with his hands smudged with the death of stars, had faintly begun to see that readiness is on. Thank you. I'll end this with a little prose here. I'd hoped that my book would stop the world in its tracks. I'm not joking, it's really true. I made sure copies were sent to my family members and close friends, who in turn would, I hoped, disseminate my poems far and wide. My sister, a poor Clare Franciscan cloistered nun, who had led a life of silence, prayer, and penance for over 50 years, was the first to respond. A lot of words, dear brother, she wrote. I, for one, wish to enter the silence of God. It was a bitter pill, but what did I expect? My oldest brother, fingering my slim volume, said to me, "So, you've got yourself published. Good for you. My only hope is to have my name inscribed in the book of heaven." Still clinging to a sliver of hope and affirmation, I turned to my other brother, my literary inspiration, the one who used to declaim lines from Shakespeare and the Greek poets when I was little and stir me to my very depths. He hesitated a bit, then smiling, he said, "Look here, have no fear. There's no chance anyone will want to pirate this." No one who was crushed could have laughed as hard as I did. I rushed to the sea with my box of books. I flung some into the waves, hoping they'd float and carry away my secrets. They sank to the bottom. Some were snatched out of my hands by raucous gulls. A few scuttled away as crabs and ducked into their dank caverns. I tore up the rest and gave them to the wind. My words blew away and became part of, as they say, the great unknown. No, make it just the unknown. Thank you, Raj.
All right, so next up, I'm particularly pleased to introduce our next poet, someone who I corresponded with for many years and never met until today. So it's wonderful. He's coming from Syracuse and was raised in exile from Tibet and India as the author of a memoir published by Penguin India and multiple poetry collections, including the finalist for the Northern California Independent Booksellers Book of the Year Award in 2012. Let's please welcome Sarang Wangmo Gopal. Sarang.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi, for inviting me to be part of this wonderful company, and also to be included within sort of the company of Indian diaspora. For Tibetans who are, who were born and raised in India, home is Tibet, a place that a lot of Tibetans will never get to, but home is also India, where we were raised. So it's good to be invited to be part of the company. I'll read a few poems from my two books and then some new poems that I'm working on. has remembered, I'm only beginning to understand how seasons affect me. Winter, snow beating street people into obedience. How mothers held back from stepping out in discreetly ornamented shoes and pinned nylon socks. This is the way I count years. The winters we had fire and the summers we erased because we were in another place. I'm told I was 5 in 1971, even though my birth certificate states I was born in 1969. The elders count on their fingers. They have done it for a long time. It was winter, but not the kind of winter they were born into. They were wearing hand-knitted woolen sweaters. I was wearing a jacket that children born to refugees wear. When I'm with them, I cannot say I remember. I say, as I am told I remember. It is not the accuracy of the story that concerns us, but who gets to tell it. Second lesson. The newspaper showed a boy drinking from the sky, water rested in his clavicle. M said he was not the kind her daughter would marry. Dashi wanted to know if rain had harmful elements in it. M said decent girls stayed clear of rain. When it is hot, undress in the dark, go to the roof. If the monsoon clouds appear, wish farmers well. Mothers teach their daughters to pick the best tomatoes, shy to the touch, surface of cement. Tashi asks if husbands are picked the same way. Sunspot on cheeks, wash with rose water, pluck under your arm. S held his penis and ran around the tree saying he was blessing it. The elder roared with laughter and said he would grow up to be a wild one. S was blessed, free from the cycle of female birds. M taught us to peel an apple without disturbing it, saying time and again how important it was to concentrate on the knife. This is an example of a good woman. I'll read a few short poems. Most of my poems, of course, concern exile. So these are sort of variations, I suppose. The mountain air must see time as passing in present. The elders say times have changed, as though they'd forego a year if it were up to them. Days grow in them like a potato. They see their body as a map to the country's center from where the young never return the same. Nothing is spectacular without a reference, or does that change? Snow traps everything for a while. The river stops flowing. Surrender. I won't explain my poems because I do a terrible job. Between the three of us, we had a garden of camellias. The whites were planted in the middle. By the time we changed our minds, the plants had taken root, and we took it as another lesson. The doctor often found something wrong in one of us. We assumed we'd grow feeble before old. Raindrops left puddles on our clothes laid out, flattening the grass into our shapes. They would dry, but again, there was nothing we took for granted. If the sun came out, if thieves climbed our gates, if naked spirits tucked damp shirts into their porous ribs. On our side of the town, we referred to fluctuations in our collective karma for predictions for weather. We had many ways to introduce ourselves, but we said, "Where are you going? And have you eaten today?" Sorry, they're so somber. Autonomy of the mind. In my family, decisions are made by the Lama who dreams into fate. The gardener who is rotten away is not as lucrative as the gardener whose garden grows tomatoes. After all, we're living through a conjecture. Wiser to say sorry within the alternatives of a moment and read the display of toes as assent. Men are men because we know. The men in my family hope to return to a country they left in their youth. They say home and point away from the cement rooms they have built. At home, they say, the grass was tall, the milk was sweet. At home, there was no need for sugar. The youngest in the family died during the year of his obstacle. A pilgrimage to 4 holy sites and 7 offerings proved odious, but Duma, the family dog, survived a fall. Once a year, the girls on our street worshipped their brothers with offerings of flowers and vermilion powder, remembering that brothers will one day take wives. We wish to know the ordeals of all beings we pray for, amphibians, crocodiles, what of oranges hanging like bats, their discomfort in being ripe. What perpendicular roots we've formed in this, our neighbor's motherland. The departed will return, but that's not necessarily good. To be born a human is a commendable feat, the elders say, marking our foreheads with black soot to keep evil eyes away. So I'll read a few poems that are part of a larger, a new collection around, I guess, nation. The title of the book is either Revolute or I forget what the other title is. So, Revolute. Rain foreshadows the assault on ants, patches of water's labor, spreading as gossip does in our neighborhood of 2. I'm building a nation in my body whose color abandons images for a symmetry of emptiness. A strand of hair misplaces as we do. History recasts the image of a goddess, but what of my homesickness, resisting memorization of a home? The heart builds an army of metonyms to embalm a sensation, prefacing loss. The first exile came with new words, whittling everything to images of approximations, desire of, memory of, emptying authority over self. Even yes or no translate uneasily in exile. And the brilliant man who knows what we do not says, let no lover call you by your name. We are to our lovers as unlike who we were. We are already to lovers, our never selves. The rain keeps our fingers idly clenched in a loose question inside pockets sewn for storage of keys and unwanted pennies. We are children of women, all of us. Rain again, and the worms rise to the top of the barrel where we gather soil to make better soil. We could build a country barrel by barrel. We could move the mountains and rivers closer to us, where space fulfills desire.
All right, thank you all so much for staying on. We just have a couple of readers left, and then we'll have a Q&A. And I hope you'll hang out. People will be happy to sign books. And before I introduce our final reader, I'm going to read a couple of poems myself. And just to remind you, there is a whole day of programming planned for tomorrow. And there's some wonderful stuff planned, including a very famous Bollywood actor who's going to be here. And Rakesh is going to be doing something for his book. So I hope some of you can join us for that. I also just wanted to mention, I have up here, I'm running an immersive writing workshop in Sardinia in January with Forrest Gander and some other people. And if you're at all interested, it's for a week in Italy. And so I have some flyers for that, in case you know anyone who's interested. So I thought I would just begin, Rakesh had mentioned that I recently did a translation of Indo, who is a wonderful 8th century Tamil poet saint, a kind of bhakti poet. Maybe the South Indian corollary to Mirabai. And she was the only female Alvar saint. There are 12 Alvar saints, they're all men, except for Andal. And she composed all of this work before the age of about 14 or 15, at which point she kind of apocryphally disappeared. and no one knows really what happened, but the work is really remarkable. And so along with Indian poet Priya Sarukai Chabriya, we translated her work, which had only really appeared in kind of academic translations. So both of us as poets, and we did something a little radical. We translated some of the work collaboratively, and other works Priya translated and I translated the same poem, and we included both versions, her translation and my translation of the same poem in the book, which is called The Autobiography of a Goddess. So I'll just give you a little excerpt from this poem of hers, which is called The Song to Kamadeva. And Kamadeva, some of you probably know, in Indian mythology is the god of love, the son of Mahavishnu and Mahalakshmi, and oftentimes in Indian iconography is pictured holding a bow and arrow, except he shoots flowers out of his bow. This is Kamadeva, and I'll just give you a little taste of Indo. This is from the middle of the poem. 3 times a day I will worship at your feet, with fragrant blossoms of moonflowers, my heart ablaze, from fiery tips of arrows woven from efflorescence to spell his name, Govinda, a musk essence of transcendence. Aim the arrow at him and let it fly, to pierce him until I might enter that succulent light. O ancient Kamadeva, I paint cave walls with your names, trace with glistening forefinger your banner bearing glinting fish, attendants waving fly whisks, your sleek sugarcane bow shining with filigreed carving. Do you even take notice of my obsession? From childhood I pledged all that in time would ripen and swell to the one and only Lord of Dwarka. I beg you, unite me with him. My surging breast long to leap to the touch of his hands, which holds the flaming discus and the conch. I shudder to think of my body being offered to mortal men, when it was made to wait only for him, like prasad, the sacred offering anointed by learned Brahmins versed in the Vedas, but instead of being mingled with the divine, to be sniffed and pawed at, desecrated by forest jackals who eat decomposing bones easily as blessings. Even through springtime I will keep my word, Kamadeva, and praise you for rousing the insatiable, sleep-heavy limbs of maidens into exquisite mutual enticement. All day I will sit within myself, waiting for the dark Lord, hued and arrayed overhead as rain clouds, then as dusky blossoms from a blackberry bush. Please coax his glance this way, persuade his lotus eyes to consider my life bud, to shower down grace. Oh, Manmatha, take my simple gifts, sugarcane, flattened, freshly harvested grains, steamed sweet rice, flattened patty. Ask him to eat them from my hand. Coax the world measurer to caress my waist, to encircle the twin globes of my breasts, and your glory will resound for generations to come. See, my body is filthy, my hair unravels, my lips pale. I eat but once a day, grudgingly, already engorged on longing, O radiant and mighty Kamadeva. Whoa! And I'll read you, this book just came out. I have a fellowship at the University of Sydney, and this book, which is a new and selected poem, just came out in Australia. And it was really exciting because I could kind of choose the poems that I was most happy with and leave off the ones that are pretty embarrassing from back in the day. And I'll just read you one more from this book, and then I'll finish with a couple of newer poems. So this is a poem I wrote in China. I love to experiment with forms, and you'll hear in the next poem, bring Asian forms into English. And this is a particular form, it's called a specular. And you'll hear that this poem proceeds and it gets to the stopping point, and in the middle, it will unwind itself from the middle portion backwards until it arrives again at the front. It's kind of a reflective mirror-like poem. Only other thing I'll say about it is I wrote it when I was in China. I was teaching at Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou, very far from my family and friends. And I would walk every morning around 6 a.m. Thinking I was alone, but of course there were a lot of people doing Tai Chi and all kinds of things in the distance. So this poem is called The Melancholy of Shadows at Dawn. Along the banks of the Pearl River, where ghostly outlines of buildings materialize in the polluted smog, I could just disappear with the old men doing Tai Chi and selling turtles in rusty buckets, hawking stringy phlegm into the river. I can barely see myself reflected. My lover, daughters, mother plunged through me, wispy as shepherd's purse, blanched in boiling water, before filling the wanton dumplings that wrinkle like my baby girl's hands once wrapped around my fingers, grasping so tightly, and I swore I would never ever let go. They're all that hold me to this earth. They're all that hold me to this earth, and I swore I would never ever let go, my fingers grasping so tightly, like my baby girl's hands once wrapped around the wanton dumplings that wrinkle, blanched in boiling water before filling. Through me, wispy as shepherd's purse, my lover, daughter's mother plunge into the river. I can barely see myself reflected in rusty buckets, hawking stringy phlegm with the old men doing Tai Chi and selling turtles in the polluted smog. I could just disappear where ghostly outlines of buildings materialize along the banks of the Pearl River. All right. And then I'll just read, in the interest of time, just two more. And this poem, I like to read occasionally when I'm invited to something that is South Asian or Indian in nature, because it's very much about the kind of Indian version of English that you hear in India, and the way that some people call it Hinglish, the kind of combination of different tongues. And the other thing I'll say about this poem is in a form called a punkti. And I'm very interested. I mean, when I went to graduate school, we learned all about sonnets and villanelles and, besides maybe the ghazal and the haiku, very little about Asian forms. And of course, there's such a rich history. I mentioned rasa theory, but if you look at the Rig Veda, you have so many different metrical forms. And so the punkti is a Vedic meter found in one of the later books of the Rig Veda. It's also known as the fifth horse pulling the golden chariot of the sun god, and the meter is said to be derived from bone marrow. And so just so you know that it's in stanzas of 40 syllables written any number of quintains, and each pada or line has 8 syllables. So that's just the metrical form of this. And I think I won't need to explain too much. Those of you that don't know Indian English, hopefully contextually, will be able to figure this out. This is called Punkti in 5 padas. So you remember Superman, not Shaktiman. Veal, not Entu cutlets and Ramarajan pants, turning up half an hour early to help the host his party. So you've scarfed cheesy gorditas from Taco Bell, but no greasy papads at a roadside dhaba? Never watched Barrister Vinod or serials on Doordarshan? So you've never used IST or Indian stretchable time as genuinely plausible excuse for your perpetual lateness, or said za as a kid, 3 1 za 3, 3 2 za 6, to help in practicing learning your multiplication tables. Don't fret, been rung